I used to look at puppies that were sitting incorrectly and I'd be like, oh, that's just a lazy sit, they'll grow out of it. And that's true. Some puppies do correct how they're moving and move out of it, and other dogs don't. And because they've been sitting and sliding and sitting funny, they now have an imbalance in those muscles so that it's hard for them to actually hold a correct sit. Over my career, I've now noticed, a lot of the patients that I see with back problems and a lot of patients that I see with more knee problems are all the dogs that the owners are like, oh yeah, he's always sat like that. He's always had a lazy sit. So now I've just sort of put that correlation together. So now as soon as I see puppies sitting incorrectly, I'll be like, oh, you want to correct that. Make sure they tuck their legs in. This is how you want to do it.
It might be something as simple as a slip and fall on a wintry day like this that results in your dog needing rehabilitation therapy. Or perhaps you're looking for alternative therapies when traditional medicine just doesn't cut it. Well, there are places that you can find that help, and they're complementary to traditional veterinary medicine. One of those places is Full Circle Vet, and it's here that we're finding out about all of that on today's episode of NSK9.
Dr. Bishop and I are both interested in holistic medicine. And so we wanted a practice where we could offer things like acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine and herbal therapy. And then I became interested in rehab and in chiropractic care. And so that's sort of what we evolved into being. And we originally were a full-service hospital where we had all of our own patients, and we saw them for a combination of both Western therapies and all the other alternative and complementary modalities that Jennifer and I liked to include in our treatments. And then we just became really, really busy with so many people wanting the complementary therapies and the alternative therapies, and it just became much too difficult for us to continue doing all of our regular Western medicine as well. So now we're a referral-based practice where people see their regular primary veterinarians for all of their regular Western medicine, and then they come and see us when they want to also have some traditional Chinese medicine or acupuncture or rehab services. And that way we can concentrate on what we do best that isn't offered everywhere else, and people are still getting great care from their primary veterinarians.
So this isn't instead of Western medicine, this is in addition to?
It's usually in addition to, and we do have some clients that really want to be using mostly natural therapies and don't want to be using a lot of pharmacological products and things like that. But what Dr. Bishop and I are sort of middle of the road people, where we still see that there is a place where we do need our different drugs and therapies for patients, but where that's sort of the beginning of the treatment, right? Where we add in the Chinese herbals and the acupuncture and the other things. We're really trying to support the body to help heal itself. And we're more interested in preventive care as well. So how do we keep the patient healthy afterwards so that they may not develop other health problems?
Just like in human medicine, dog owners are seeking complementary and alternative therapies more and more often. Here at Full Circle Vet, they offer rehabilitation services and Chinese medicine.
This is our magic fish tank. So we have a reserve tank through the bank that's the same size as this one. And it brings water, and it fills the water slowly up from the bottom, and we can change the height of it depending on where the dog's at, fitness-wise. And then there's a grey bit at the bottom, which is our treadmill belt, which we can change the speed of, and we'll get them moving at different speeds depending on, again, what we're aiming for. And also we'll do different times. So they tend to start off with kind of 2 to 3 minutes. And most people are surprised, but they'll actually only usually do a maximum of 10-15 minutes in there, there's no point in going much longer because it's actually harder work to work against the resistance of the water. So 10 to 15 minutes in here is the equivalent of around about 30 minutes on land.
Rehabilitation is often needed and is almost always beneficial after surgery or sports injuries.
Like at one point he could stand, but certainly if he wagged his tail, that would put him off balance.
Yep.
And now he's back to the point where he's still knuckling some, but he can, if he moves forward. You'll see once he tries to leave for the door.
Yes, exactly. They have to be prepared.
We have seen patients where they didn't have rehab after their first knee surgery, for example, and they did after the second knee surgery, and the owners definitely found that the recovery was faster afterwards when they were having rehab as well, or that leg did do better. Now, there are certainly some dogs out there that have surgery alone, and they do fantastic. But we do find that the addition of the rehabilitation is really important. And for some patients, surgery isn't an option, so we'll see them as well. And for some patients, there's a long wait, especially now with everything going on in the world. Sometimes the wait to get in to see the surgeon is longer. So having them in for some prehab ahead of time keeps the patient comfortable and also helps us to try to maintain some of that muscle mass, because we know that the better the muscle mass is before surgery, the faster these animals recover afterwards. So we're big on having some prehab as well to try to keep them in their best state possible when they go into surgery. We're going to have a crowd again.
In the ideal world, they would get a scope in the shoulder.
Yeah. But of course, that's invasive in and of itself, right?
Yeah. So that's, in the gold standard ideal world, you'd have diagnostic imaging, you'd have joint scopes and things like that. Because we don't have a lot of access to that in the Atlantic provinces, we tend to just do a lot of it by feel. So that we work on a presumptive diagnosis. With regards to expectations, we keep it nice and simple. We make it quite realistic at the beginning that there is no magic pill. We are not that we can give you a 14-day course of tablets and by magic your dog's going to walk again. The more effort you put in at home and the more that you can come and see us, the quicker your dog will recover. But we also, as I say, make it individual to everybody so that, it will be slightly different depending on where they started at the beginning as to how long it's going to take. Some of our sports dogs, if they've got shoulder injuries like we saw earlier, they're going to be out for nearly a year doing rehabilitation. We make that very clear from the start that that's where you're at and that there is no simple answer to it. It isn't, you can come and see me for 2 weeks and I give you some sit to stand exercises and by magic you're going to be fixed.
Yeah, they do. There are some studies to show that areas of the brain that light up with certain emotions in humans also light up in dog brains. So we assume that depression would be one of those emotions that they can experience. Symptoms seem to be quite varied. So you can see anything from mild lethargy to inappetence, being picky with their food, maybe looking for more attention, or maybe keeping away and not being as social as they once were, having accidents in the house, destructing furniture, things like that. You need to be careful though, because there are a lot of underlying health concerns, not depression related, but sicknesses or ailments that we can see the same symptoms. Or if we have a dog with cognitive dysfunction or dementia-like symptoms, or a dog suffering from chronic pain, those symptoms can look like that as well. So if there have been changes in the home with new pets, new people, moving, things like that might fit the history and make it more likely to be depression. Animals also read off of our emotions. So if you're anxious or you have depression or there's a lot of strain in the home environment, they pick up on that and they can also mimic those symptoms as well. Sometimes we do need medication, but behavioral modification is a big part of that. You should always be working with them at home to try and fix as much as you can and not relying solely on the medication, although some dogs need to be on meds long term, some we can wean off after things have leveled out a little bit. So increasing activities that they like to do, car rides, going for walks, spending more time with them. Or if they've recently lost a pet, looking into therapeutics like pheromones to help adjust, or certain supplements, maybe introducing a new family member, a new pet into the home. Things like that can help bring them out of it. And if not, then maybe we look more seriously at medications.
Dogs can experience sort of that mental health element too that humans can, right?
Yeah,
and that when they can't, like,
absolutely.
as dogs thrive on going for a walk or doing their sport or some sort of activity, right?
Yeah. So I think that's really important to think about their emotional well-being and their mental well-being as well, because a lot of these dogs, that is what they do for enjoyment, and it can be frustrating for them, and it can be depressing for them when they can't do the things that they want. And sometimes we can get them back to doing their favorite things, or sometimes we can help the owner modify them. It's like, okay, well, it's not going to be safe for him to do this, but what if we did it this way? Then it would still be safer, but they still get some of the joy. Like, for example, if your dog has chronic knee disease because he's had bilateral cruciates and he's still got arthritis in both his knees, Chuck It is never going to be the favorite game for me, right? Where the dog's running and twisting and turning because it's bouncing. But maybe we could use something else. Maybe we could still do shorter retrieves to a stopped object. So they still get to go and retrieve and bring it back, but there's not that franticness. They're not running as far. We're being more cognizant of how wet and slippery the grass is today. Like, sometimes just modifying the games that we do with these dogs can really help them prevent injury, and yet they still are excited. And then for dogs that are down, figuring out other games that are fun for them. Like Shiloh, we talked about getting a cart for him so he could still go on walks, or getting them fitted for a help 'em up harness, so the owners can give them a little bit of support without killing their own backs. And then still the pet can go for a little bit longer walk. They can enjoy the outdoors. They can do some of the things that brought them and their owner joy together. And I think that's important too.
The individual plan for everybody, it depends on kind of, what the owners can do at home, what the dog feels like doing that day.
Because we've seen like a little old dog today who isn't going to do anything at home, right?
Yeah, so, the little old ladies, they've probably did dog training when they were a puppy 13 years ago, and they now don't want to do the exercises at home. Whereas dogs like my dog Cherry here, she's more than willing to work. She wants to do the exercises at home. And we can then plan that she's going to do a lot more at home than little old dogs that we're going to just see more often to keep them nice and comfortable, versus building up muscle and making sure that they can return to sport. So just because they've all torn an ACL doesn't mean that we're all going to treat them all the same. It means that we're going to come up with a different plan depending on what they can do and what the owners can do and what their end goals are.
The nature of this type of work is that the staff here at Full Circle Vet get to know the personalities of the individual dogs and their owners.
We're seeing these pets all the time, and so we do build up a big bond with them. And I think that makes a big difference, because a lot of the treatments that we do requires the patient to be willing, right? They need to sit and relax for their acupuncture. They need to be comfortable with me putting my hands all over them to have their chiropractic. For the rehabilitation, we need them to actively participate. There's certain exercises and things that we want them to do. We need them to actually do that. So we have to have this level of trust between us and the patients, and we have to find ways that we can motivate them to do the things that we need them to do to make them comfortable.
Obviously, we work from everything from kind of Chihuahuas up to kind of Burmese mountain dogs. So you've also got the size of a tricep on a Chihuahua versus a Burmese mountain dog. It's slightly different. So you get used to what you're feeling, and you're looking more for the very careful kind of body positioning and kind of, have they flicked their eye? Are they yawning? Are they a little bit stressed to show pain, rather than relying on, say, a human to say, ow?
What would you like pet owners to understand or know more about the sort of holistic options and the rehab options that are available to them?
I'd really just like them to know that it's out there and that it's always better to start earlier rather than later, right? Like a lot of times Dr. Bishop and I used to call us the last chance doctors, because we would only see patients once they've been to their regular vet and everything was tried that they could do, and now there's like nothing else that can be left, and they're like, oh, well, let's just go send it to the alternative people and see what they could do. When so many of those times, if we had seen the patient at the beginning of the disease process, we could have done so much more. And it's the same thing with rehab. A lot of times we'll have some doctors or surgeons refer them to us for rehab on cases that aren't going well. But if they aren't having a problem, they don't send them to us. So now by the time we're seeing the dog, there's already been a lot of muscle loss, there's already been a huge amount of compensations. If we had seen them earlier, it would have been easier for us to prevent all of that. And then my other big one is just the "he's getting old" comment, because we have so many patients that sometimes we'll see that and we'll be treating them and they'll be like, oh, well, we thought he was just getting old. But getting old isn't an actual diagnosis or a disease. Like, if you're not getting around as much, is there a reason? Are they painful? Are they having trouble moving? That sort of thing. Or is there some other health problem? So we are big on recommending that people have their annual exams and their annual blood work for animals. And then the same thing with their mobility. We'd like them to start coming to see us as soon as they're noticing some challenges, versus when the dog's so bad that it can barely get up and get around, and now they're like, oh, we have to do something. So early intervention is always so much easier, and we can get results faster.
Dogs have a third eyelid, and there are actually a lot more species that do have third eyelids as well. We don't. Ours is gone. But basically it acts as a form to protect the eye, to clean the eye as the eyelid moves horizontally, clears out debris, and distributes the tear film. There's also a gland in behind the third eyelid that produces half of the tear production. So it's very important to keep the eyes lubricated and healthy. Some diseases we can see is if that gland were to prolapse. It's called cherry eye, which we often see in our younger dogs, and often brachycephalic breeds. Occasionally we can see types of cancer develop there too, but they're more uncommon. And the purpose of it, other than distributing the tear film and keeping it clean, is also when dogs are hunting or grazing or out in the wind or dirt, it's just a form to kind of protect from those elements as well. So you may see the third eyelid elevate if a dog's not feeling well, if they've recently just come out of anesthesia, or when they first immediately wake up from a sleep, you can see them kind of linger, but then they should always pop back down.
What we do differently at Full Circle that I'm so proud of is that we are open to all types of treatment. It's not that we're refusing to use medications. It's that we believe in medications, but also believe in Chinese herbals, so that if we can use less medications and support the body with herbals, or good nutrition, or actually getting out and having physical exercise and improving your mobility, that's what we look at. We look at everything that brings a full, joyous life to the patient. And I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that we can kind of look at the whole patient and provide everything that they need for optimal physical health and mental health and emotional health.
It used to be that it was the sports dog people. They wanted the conditioning and they wanted their dogs at the top of their game. Now it's pet dogs are coming through and people want their pet dogs to be kept comfortable. You know, they go to physiotherapy, so why wouldn't their dog come to rehab? So
You're still seeing the sport dogs, right?
So yeah, we're still seeing the sport dog, we're still doing the conditioning, we're still making sure they can return to sport, but we're then seeing the pet dogs at the same time, that we're keeping them comfortable in their old age. We've got the dogs with arthritis that otherwise we would just put on painkillers and that would be their life. We're now getting them off the painkillers and making sure that they're actually enjoying their old age rather than...
Does it surprise you?
From my point of view, no. Because
this makes sense.
Because it makes sense to me. In the general wider world, yes. It surprises me that it's taken this long to filter down through kind of the veterinary world and also through the pet world that this is actually an option. And we still get people coming to us that say, we had no idea you were here. We had no idea this was even an option for our pets. And then they're amazed at the difference. Just some simple things can make their dog's life, and we can get them nice and comfortable.
I think it's changed for a couple of reasons. I think just in general, people are becoming more aware that these other things are even available. You know, they're having these treatments for themselves, and they're like, hey, I didn't know that my dog could have that too. I benefited so much when my back was sore and I got acupuncture. I want him to have that as well. And I also think that over the last 20 years, our pets have become more and more like family members as opposed to just the dog. So now that all of our clients want to do absolutely everything they can for their pets to give them the most comfortable life possible. We have lots of patients here that I know, they come in and get their treatments before the parents ever worry about getting themselves treated. And that's just sort of the thing. It's their pets are their babies and children as much as the rest of the family, and they always want to make sure that they're getting everything they need to live their best life.
Actually, you know what the hardest part, apart from not having a magic pill, it's that we get really attached to our patients. Especially as a rehab tech, I spend once to twice a week with most of my patients, week in, week out, for months on end. And a lot of them, we're doing it as palliative care, kind of end of life. So you become very, very attached to them. And we also, if they're not palliative, you've also still spent, say, 9 months with them week in, week out. And then you still see them throughout their life, so they get older and unfortunately they then pass on. So it's kind of like treating one of your best friend's dogs. By the time they finish with us, you're basically a member of the Full Circle family. Oh, it's worth every single second of it. So just the joy of kind of when they come in and they'll be kind of down and they can't use their legs, and then the first time they take a step again, that's kind of a big celebration. We all have a party, or we fit them in a cart and they walk around the lobby, or one of our patients, the first time she walked in on a leash of her own accord, there was like a full-blown party went on. Like, it's worth it every single time, just for those little tiny moments.
I love this work. Like, I get so much joy out of these simple things. Like, and it is the simple things. It's coming in and seeing that dog be able to stand square and get into their sit, and or seeing the fact that they can go on their walk, because it's not even just about the dog. Like, a lot of times people stop doing the walks when the dog can't do the walk with them. So to have people say, oh my gosh, I've got my walking partner back, like, this is so nice, and it's something that they always enjoyed, I just love that. And I love that I can help them be sort of have their best life, and because mobility matters so much with that. And even when I was doing more regular medicine with the internal medicine, Chinese medicine, and what Dr. Bishop does, like, it just improves the quality of life of my patients so much, and I'm just grateful that I have the opportunity to do that, because I meet amazing pets, I meet amazing owners, because let's face it, you know, if you barely care about your dog, you are not bringing it for rehab and chiro and acupuncture. So I meet the most wonderful people that care the most about their pets. And you've seen some of the pets that I see today. They're amazing animals. And I get to really get to know them because I see them so often.
These dogs certainly aren't going to fit in your purse, and despite their size, they sometimes still think that they're lap dogs. Living with really big dogs. That's next week on NSK9.
So he has a ramp just like loading a horse into a horse wagon, and he has a horse coat for his outdoor jacket. It's literally a pony coat that we purchased because you can't get dog coats large enough. And yeah, it's been quite an adventure with him.